their way of getting me to understand what's happening in the world. Normally when I speak to a group of exciting young leaders, I talk about my journey. So I just thought, if anyone wants to have a chat later or follow me on Twitter. This was my 8-year plan 9 years ago. And I was on a leadership course and was working in a government agency for New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, and I decided that in 7 to 8 years' time, by the time I was 34 or 35, I would go and be a general manager for a non-profit. These are the skills and experiences I thought I needed, and if anyone looks at my LinkedIn profile, you'll be able to see that I did all of these things over the last sort of 4 or 5 years, and then managed to get this job at Volunteering New Zealand. So, if you're sitting there and you've got a degree that you're not possibly that excited about, I've got a design degree. Not really anything to do with what I do now, but I finished it. You might be able to do something the same. So what I'm going to talk about is a couple of things that I've been reading recently. Has anyone heard of the Royal Society? Yep, hopefully. Right. They do quite a lot of thinking about like New Zealand and the economy and community and academics. And what they've said in their recent report is that New Zealand is a quintessential 21st century society. So we have the opportunity in the corner of the world to do some really awesome stuff and either be influenced by stuff that's happening internationally or just go, stuff you guys, and do it ourselves. So I'm going with the stuff you guys, let's do it ourselves mentality, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about what they've got in their report because I think it touches a lot around what diversity is going to mean and means in New Zealand. But before I get there, in talking about what international influence comes, how that influences some of the thinking that you might be thinking about. In Australia, they have said that that 25 years ago, volunteering is like long-term commitment, working in traditional boring organisations. Now volunteering has been exploded with opportunities like corporate volunteering, micro and episodic volunteering, and meeting the myriad of needs and opportunities out there now. So I guess I've just come back from an international conference on volunteering. It was in the Gold Coast, so not very far away. But the Australians are saying that volunteering is changing, as is everything else in our society. Now, the bit that I'm going to hopefully plug in the missing bits for some of the younger people in the room perhaps, is where we've come from and where we're sort of heading to now. And this is where we've been thinking about volunteering. If we've got a changing society, things need to change because things are different. So how do we change and think about that in a different way, and how do we do that with as many people as we want? So that's kind of the frame of diversity that I'm going to talk about next. So in this report, I don't know, I don't do a lot of reading myself, so I'm just going by what people will tell me, some of the volunteers that we've met. There's 7 sections to the report. One's around diversity, one's around population growth, so I'm assuming that people know that we've got 4.5 million people in New Zealand. It's looking to explode, particularly in Auckland, over the next 10 to 15 years. Tangata whenua, so the roots of our country being really, really important to the way that we do things. And there's stuff that we do here in New Zealand that you may not even think about that comes from a tangata whenua perspective, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that too. Migration, I see a few different cultures in the room. We've got lots of people coming into New Zealand. We probably want to have lots more. I'm not sure what the national government wants or needs or thinks that we need, but whether we like it or not, we are becoming a more diverse country. And we do that through some of the tourism stuff as well. Households and families. Who here lives at home with mum and dad? Okay. Who used to live at home with mum and dad? Okay, so we've got probably a very traditional kind of family context in the room, but not everyone has a mum and dad. Not everyone has a house or a home. So that's changing in New Zealand. Regional variation, so I've mentioned kind of the Auckland. I think there's some statistic at the moment that has got that says that we've got 130 different languages that are being spoken in Auckland. Not entirely sure, but it's a lot. I think about, okay, we're going to do some work in the community sector or through volunteering. How are we going to communicate with all those people that speak all those different languages? Is English enough to communicate them, or to get them to understand what it is that they might be contributing as a volunteer. And work, just in general. So I'm going to talk about kind of the changes in employment that we're seeing over the generations and what that might mean for diversity. Okay, so the dot points. This is the most number of words on slides that I've got. Okay. So New Zealand today, ageing but increasingly active older population. So in your context, you're thinking about what perhaps young people can be doing. How can you utilise some of the older people that are kind of hanging out, maybe wanting to help contribute? Just an idea. Auckland, half the population in 2006 and 2013 is going to be growing exponentially. So what are you doing up there? How might you be able to contribute online with Aucklanders is probably another way of thinking about it as well. Rural faces dwindling populations. So we know that our rural communities are getting slimmer, there's less people there helping out. I just put in there agriculture, the beef, the lamb and the cheese and milk that we export is one of our biggest export markets. Who's going to do that for New Zealand when everyone leaves the rural community? Does that mean that our newest export market is something different? So the Māori population have endured and evolved with all of the demographic changes, but today our Māori is going to be a challenge. Given that we live on their land, given that we've got the Te Tiriti or Waitangi treatment and agreement, how can we ensure that our language, because given that New Zealand's only got 2 official languages and neither is English, how can we help keep that? And how can this generation coming through make sure that happens? What does that mean by the diversity if we're trying to push Te Reo Māori as a language? I mentioned about the households, so more 2-family households, split families, rejigged families. I was speaking to someone that's already trying to plan out their Christmas Day agenda. They've got 4 households to go to because they've got stepmum, dad on the girl's side, and then on the boy's side they've got stepdad and mum on the other side. So they've got to try and have Christmas with 4 families and try and keep people together, saying happy. I reckon the little kids are going to do really well with presents and food. So maybe there's some good things around that. But not every household is the same now. You know, I look at my own household. I just live by myself here in Wellington. I used to live in a flat with 2 other young women that work as much as me, and we never saw each other. It was a bit like the railway station in our house. All kind of passing through. Did we ever have a flat dinner together? No, because we're never around. What does that household look like versus someone that has got a traditional household? What does that mean by diversity and how people relate and spend their time with people that they love? So the diversity and nature of paid employment continues. So no longer is New Zealand an employment hotbed for people to work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. Who here has got a part-time job? I'm assuming that some of you are studying, some of you are working as well. Obviously, people here working. So there's some people here working, and it's Saturday. I'm working, doing my work on Saturday morning. My job definitely is not a 9 to 5 job. The jobs in the future will probably not be 9 to 5. I take Hong Kong, for example, and the retail market is 7 to 11. And you can go out shopping anytime, you can go grab a new mobile phone at 11 o'clock at night. You can do anything almost in those waking hours of normalised society. I've been on 2 webinars this week at 12 p.m. because I want to hear from some of my colleagues over in America. So I'm working at random hours all the time. If we as a nation want to connect globally and get some of that inspiration from overseas, we actually have to do it in different time zones. But according to the retail market trends, New Zealand may even become a 7 to 11 society. We don't know that. Who's going to look after the shops at 7 o'clock at night when most of us want to stay at home and watch TV and eat dinner. People will be working at those different hours. And also just alongside that, the less security and participation. If people are working at those kind of random hours, when do they have times to be with their family? When do they have times, in my context, to volunteer? When will they have time to do the work that you're doing and thinking about? So I'm just challenging the word diversity in terms of time use, because that's a really important part of diversity that I hope you'll pick up from what I'm talking about. So the stellar generation, the generation that's coming through, I'm going to just say we, that we're all young here at the moment. We are educated, industrious, collaborative. We all want to actually work together. We want to work cross-city, cross-border. I want to work with my colleagues in Colombia. I want to do some work with some people soon in Romania around volunteering. We're just going to make it happen. Yep, flights, costs are a burden, but today we've got Skype and phones and mobile devices. We work in the area of the post 9/11. We're all aware of what happens around the world a little bit, depending on perhaps our media intake. But what we do know close to home is we are the post-Christchurch quake generation. We know what it's like in our country to have a natural disaster, and we all have had some sort of, I hope, experience of what that means, whether that's someone that's close to us or whether it's the memory that you remember as soon as you heard about the earthquake, what it is that you might have done to contribute through fundraising, through helping someone, whatever it might have been. Most of New Zealanders have been touched by that. In Christchurch, it's totally. Is there someone here from Christchurch? Yes, great. In Christchurch, I'm not going to talk about you by not being you, but it's different. I come in as a foreigner into a country that into a city that I remember as being something, and now it's something else. So, you know, in New Zealand, diversity means a lot of things. We're raised in institutional and economic instability. There's this whole kind of post-GFS, whatever it is, that acronym, global financial crisis. We all know about it. We're all going, oh gosh, hopefully it doesn't happen again. If we don't know about it, it might happen again. We don't know if our economies are going to stay the same, stay stable. Depleting resources. I've sort of talked about a little bit about kind of some of our export markets. We used to have more sheep in New Zealand. We still have more sheep than people, but we actually have more. Or hopefully we've got more cows. So, you know, what does that export market mean for us? We used to have lots and lots of beautiful, clean lakes. I think of the people that are older than me that talk about they spent their summer holidays jumping into clean lakes and not having to worry about anything. They would just jump in, grab their togs, jump in and spend the summer holidays in the water. There's not many lakes now in New Zealand you can actually really want, or that you might actually want to do that in. So in terms of depleting resources, so I'm talking about natural resources, what does that mean in terms of diversity? We're globally connected. We were talking about our friend that lives in Thailand. Both got a message from him at 3 a.m. in the morning. You know, all of that technology stuff helps us become globally connected. And we've got this new species of people. They're the screenagers, the first tribe of the digital natives. I'm just going to throw these words in here. The first tribe, digital natives. Hopefully all of us here, I'm sure, have all got like these things hanging out on our hands. And that's just to differentiate where they're not the digital immigrants. So it's people like my mum, where internet is a second language. And, you know, it feels like it's something different. So there's some diversity just there. You know, how do we answer a question? I mean, I go straight to Google. I know a lot of people do. How does my mum ask a question? She's now thinking, oh, maybe I should do that Google thing. How would my granddad in India that doesn't have a phone ask a question? He would ask the neighbour, he would ask the entire community around him, and they would all pitch in with the knowledge that they have, and hopefully someone's sitting around with a phone to get to Google. So I guess I'm just talking about knowledge and the diversity and the range of knowledge. And I bring that back to a New Zealand context because we don't have fast broadband everywhere in the country. And we need to be really aware of that. It's actually not good enough for a lot of us just to do emails and send out email newsletters, even though it's cost efficient and it's fast. Because on one side of the economy, we've got people who get too many emails and too much communication and don't have time to read it. And on the other side, we've got people that can't even download it. So another one that we've been thinking about at Volunteer in New Zealand is just time use, and I've talked about this a bit over the last couple of minutes. So the way that we work, or the way work gets done is changing. So people are working from home, people are doing contract work, people are perhaps got full-time jobs but doing the full-time 37.5 hours or 40 hours in a different way. Some people are working late at night, some people have children and families and they're working around them. The old hiring practices and new approaches are changing, so how people are getting selected to be part of things is different. And I put kind of digital stuff in there as an enabler, but also something that's really hard for people because some people don't see some of that information, so they don't have the opportunity to apply for or get involved with organisations. So who are the people that should be in this room today and they don't have access to technology, so they're not here? And it's just because of their circumstance, because of where they live. It's not because they're not good enough to be here or they don't have the time or they don't have the desire to be here. It's just that they missed out because they're missing something, some piece of information. TV on demand and My Sky, I've just put that in as a reminder of some people that can afford this stuff, some people that have access to this stuff. So who here watches TV on demand? Yeah, pretty much everyone. Right. Does anyone actually watch 6 o'clock news now? If anyone watches news, a few of us. Great, okay. There's a few of us. I think, 5 years' time, 6 o'clock news, don't worry about the 6 o'clock thing. There's not going to be a 6 o'clock. There's just going to be news. The internet, working from home, that's a huge thing as well as working from anywhere that you are. So if I took 5 minutes out, I can quickly go and check some emails and do some work on my phone. It's so easy to do work wherever you are. It's so easy to connect with organisations wherever you are. It's so easy to contribute to something bigger from wherever you are. So that place and space is now online, or can be online, but just to remind us all that perhaps not everyone has access to that. And just the no work week. So what I mean by that is that some people don't actually need to work a full week to do their job now. We create jobs in our organisations or create volunteer roles in our organisations to fit the work that needs to be done. Does it need to be a work week? Does it actually need to be X amount of hours? Can it actually be just 10 minutes every 5 days? Not sure. So we need to start thinking about what time use means to us. And I just wanted to sort of finish up on what diversity kind of means to me personally. And I'm involved in lots of volunteer work, as I've put in my little list before. But I've got a design degree, I love fashion. This is me wearing some coffee packets from Trade Aid when I do some of my Trade Aid work. So Trade Aid being a store that supports fair trade. I've been a spokesperson for them and I've done a lot of work on their trusts and done some education work. So for me, diversity means how can I best contribute with my passion. So my passion being how can I integrate fashion into some of the volunteer work that I do. I am all for quick hits and how can I help as fast as I can something of cause. So the old selfie with a message on Facebook. So with the Red Cross, they have put out a campaign. How can people I guess contribute online, and you can do quite a bit of good stuff or damage on social media. And I guess diversity means to me that you get to connect with people that aren't quite like you. So in my role, I get to meet lots of great leaders, and I get to meet lots of great volunteers and lots of people in the community that mean different things to me because I'm meeting so many different people. So I'm lucky I'm in a role where I connect with lots of different people. But I have to go out there and do that because volunteering for us at Volunteering New Zealand means that it's something that everyone can contribute to in the way that they want to and feel comfortable to or want to push themselves into. So for me to meet some of the tangata whenua leaders in New Zealand is a real privilege. And I'm lucky that I'm able to connect with some diversity that we don't see kind of maybe face to face, day to day in our lives. Lastly, I didn't realise I had another slide, identification. So how people are feeling like they can belong is changing. So I just wanted to sort of touch on faith, because I think it plays a really important part in kind of how people want to connect and how they want to feel like they belong. And I bring faith into spiritual believing or belonging to or religion. But I think what we need to remember is that this is a world where it doesn't matter how much constant change we have, people will have or want to desire to have something that a place where they come from, a place that they connect to, a place that they belong. We know that faith plays a huge role in global affairs, constantly. All of those organisations that are at the United Nations that come from a faith-based have got some of the best cases for why the United Nations should do X, Y, Z. And I guess just around that identification bit, what we are starting to see is you define yourself by the people that you surround yourself with, because that's the easiest way to define yourself. So you go, I'm not that person, but I want to be like that person, and I think that person's really cool, so maybe I should try and move and become closer to them, so I can kind of identify myself as being part of something. And it's a really hard thing to sort of conceptualise, but I think it's around, how people feel like they want to belong, and that's a changing thing in terms of diversity. That's it from me. That's my thoughts. So identification, where we are in the world, how we can connect the changing nature of digital communications. And what was the very first one that I brought up? You remember? Thankfully, it's all digital. Multicultural identities and values. Anyone got any questions? Has it changed anyone's perspective on what diversity means?
I really like the concept you brought about. Diversity is about who you surround yourself with. I thought that I heard that before.
I think, because what I would encourage you is to kind of step yourselves out of the box that you live in and go, actually, who is my next door neighbour? Who is the person that's on the street on the next corner? Who's the person that's living in the next town? Who's the person that's living in the next country? And that's, that's how our proximity can define, but our proximity is kind of crushed by online networks, because you can now connect with whoever you want all over the world. And when it comes into digital, that's when your language stuff comes into the barrier, or a way of being inclusive.
Thank you very much for coming in.